Sometimes heroes aren't born in greatness. Sometimes they're born in hunger, fear, and pain. Texas, 1925. Dust. Heat. Poverty. Audie Murphy was born into a poor farming family. 12 children, 1 room, and no future. His father drifted from job to job, often disappearing for weeks. His mother, frail but kind, did everything she could to keep the children alive. He never knew comfort. Only survival. By 16, Audie had lost her too. He dropped out of school and worked wherever he could, cotton picker, farmhand, shoe shiner, anything to buy food for his brothers and sisters. He had no prospects. No hope. Until the world went to war. When Japan attacked Pearl Harbor in 1941, America called its sons to fight. For most, it was a tragedy. For Audie, it was an opportunity. A chance to escape poverty. A chance to become someone. January 1942. He walked into the recruiting office. 17 years old. Barely 5'5". 110 pounds. The army doctor took one look at him and laughed. "Son, go home. You're too small to carry a rifle." The Marines said no. The Navy said no. The Air Corps said no. But Audie didn't quit. He lied about his age, forged his birth date, and tried again. And this time, the U.S. Army said, "Welcome, Private Murphy." No one could have imagined that this small, quiet boy would become the most decorated soldier in American history. Basic training, Camp Walters, Texas. He spoke little, trained hard, and never complained. His fellow recruits joked that he was too small to fight. But his sergeant said something else. "That kid's got eyes like he's already seen hell." In 1943, he was shipped to the Mediterranean, Sicily. It was there that Audie's instincts began to show. Under fire, he stayed calm. He didn't panic. He didn't freeze. He acted. And soon, the men around him began to follow his lead. Sicily, July 10, 1943. The 3rd Infantry Division came under heavy mortar fire. Explosions tore through the hillside. Men scattered for cover. Officers were hit. Chaos. Audie, without orders, rose to his feet. "Keep your heads down! Keep firing!" He moved between foxholes, pulling the wounded out, giving covering fire. He wasn't a leader by rank, but by instinct. When the smoke cleared, half the unit was down. But they'd held the line. A sergeant later said, "That boy isn't human. He doesn't know fear." Italy, 1944. Mount Rotondo. Pinned down by a German machine gun nest. No movement. No options. Anyone who raised their head was cut down instantly. Murphy crawled forward, alone. For nearly an hour, he dragged himself through the mud, bullets slicing the air inches above him. When he got close enough, he tossed a grenade. 2 Germans down. The rest panicking. He charged. Took the position. And when his men finally caught up, he simply said, "Let's move." From that moment, Audie wasn't just another soldier. He was becoming a weapon. August 1944, Southern France. The 3rd Division advanced near Ramatuelle. German positions opened fire. Half the platoon was gone in seconds. Audie crawled through the field, pretending to be dead for nearly an hour. When the Germans moved closer, he rose and unleashed hell. He emptied his carbine, grabbed a fallen German's weapon, kept firing. When reinforcements arrived, they found him standing alone among the bodies. Blood on his face. Smoke in the air. "They came too close," he said quietly. For his actions that day, Audie Murphy received the Distinguished Service Cross, the 2nd highest military honor in the United States. But his story was only beginning. Because ahead of him lay the battle that would make him a legend. The day when one man would stand alone against an entire German attack. And win. There are moments in war when time freezes, and one man decides the fate of hundreds. France. January 1945. The winter was brutal. Cold, relentless, and cruel. The German army, though battered, refused to die. Audie Murphy's unit, Company B, 15th Infantry Regiment, was holding a small forest near the village of Holzwehr. They were exhausted. Low on ammo. Low on hope. Snow covered everything. White. Silent. Until the sound of engines shattered it. Through the mist, 6 German tanks and over 200 infantrymen began to move in. It was an attack meant to wipe them out. Murphy's men were outnumbered, 10-1. He ordered them to fall back to the treeline. "I'll stay here. I'll cover you." His soldiers hesitated. "Sir, you can't. Do as I say." He climbed onto a burning tank destroyer, its fuel already leaking and flames licking the metal. On top, a mounted .50 caliber machine gun. Bullets whizzed past. Mortars exploded. The vehicle could blow up any second. Murphy didn't care. "Come on, you bastards! Come and get me!" He opened fire. For an entire hour, Audie Murphy held his ground alone. He mowed down German soldiers charging through the snow, one wave after another. Smoke. Flames. The metal under him melting from the heat. He was wounded, shrapnel tore his leg, but he didn't stop. When his men radioed, asking for his position, he shouted through the static. "They're on top of me! But don't pull back! Keep firing!" He called in artillery on his own position. Shells began to rain around him, closer and closer. The ground shook. But the Germans broke. They retreated. When the firing stopped, Audie climbed down, limping. Smoke rose behind him. He'd single-handedly destroyed an entire enemy company. When reinforcements arrived, they couldn't believe what they saw. Dozens of bodies lay scattered across the snow. The tank destroyer still smoldered. And in the middle of it all stood Murphy. Bloodied, burned, and silent. He refused evacuation. Instead, he organized a counterattack, limping, barely able to walk, and drove the Germans completely out of Holzwehr. The next day, his commanding officer wrote, "What Murphy did here today defies explanation." For his actions at Holzwehr, Audie Murphy was awarded the Medal of Honor, the highest military decoration of the United States. The official citation read, "Second Lieutenant Murphy's indomitable courage and his refusal to yield even when alone against overwhelming odds inspired his men to victory." But for Audie, there was no pride. No joy. "I was scared," he said later. "I just knew if I ran, they'd die." When the war ended, Murphy had earned 33 medals and citations, fought in 9 major campaigns, and killed more than 240 enemy soldiers. He was 20 years old. The newspapers called him America's greatest soldier. Hollywood called him the boy hero. But inside, Audie was broken. He couldn't sleep. He heard the screams of his men. He would wake up at night, reaching for his rifle. "I fought the war again every night," he said quietly. In the years after the war, he became an actor, starring in over 40 films, including one called To Hell and Back, based on his own life. But even fame couldn't silence the ghosts. In 1971, Audie Murphy died in a plane crash. He was 45. He came from nothing. He fought for everything. And in the end, he stood alone. Audie Murphy, the man who fought alone. He survived the war. But the war never left him. Europe was silent now. The guns were gone. The smoke had cleared. But for Audie Murphy, peace was something he couldn't find. At 20 years old, he returned home a national hero. Crowds cheered his name. Newspapers printed his photo. Hollywood wanted his story. But inside, he was lost. "They called me a hero," he said once. But all I could see were the faces of the men who didn't come back. Nightmares. Flashbacks. Voices in the dark. Audie slept with a loaded pistol under his pillow. He'd wake up in the middle of the night, sweating, hearing gunfire that wasn't there. When cars backfired on the street, he'd hit the ground. Today, we call it PTSD. Back then, they called it battle fatigue. No one truly understood it. Least of all, Audie himself. He isolated, drank, gambled, and drifted between anger and guilt. But he never hid from it. He spoke about it, publicly, when almost no one dared to. The real heroes, he said, are the ones who didn't come home. In 1955, Audie Murphy starred in a movie based on his own life. To Hell and Back. He played himself. Millions watched. It became one of the highest-grossing war films of its time. But for Audie, it wasn't acting. It was reliving the worst days of his life, again and again, take after take. Every time I pulled that trigger on screen, he said, I saw their faces. My friends. My brothers. The film made him famous. But it also deepened his scars. Over the next 2 decades, Audie starred in more than 40 films. He was known for his humility, refusing to glorify war, refusing to call himself a hero. He often donated his time and money to help wounded veterans. He spoke out against the stigma surrounding mental health. And though Hollywood loved him, he never stopped being a soldier at heart. When reporters asked what he wanted to be remembered for, he said quietly, as someone who tried to do his duty. May 28, 1971. A small private plane carrying Audie Murphy disappeared in bad weather over the mountains of Virginia. Days later, search teams found the wreckage. There were no survivors. He was just 45 years old. America mourned. Flags lowered. And across the country, veterans stood in silence. Audie Murphy was laid to rest at Arlington National Cemetery. His grave became one of the most visited sites in all of Arlington, second only to President John F. Kennedy. The stone is simple, modest. Just his name, his rank, and his awards. No quotes. No grand words. Just silence. The kind he always carried within him. He didn't fight for glory, one veteran said. He fought because someone had to. He came from nothing. He gave everything. And he taught the world that courage isn't about strength. It's about refusing to quit. Today, more than 70 years later, his name still echoes in the hearts of those who serve. Not as a myth. Not as a movie star. But as a man who fought alone and never gave up. Audie Leon Murphy, 1925 to 1971. The boy who had nothing. The soldier who gave everything.